The night was supposed to be routine. It was a standard broadcast filled with the usual scheduled matches, the predictable rivalries, and the corporate-approved storylines that the audience had grown accustomed to. The energy in the arena was polite, but not electric. You could see it in the way the fans sat leaning back, checking their phones, waiting for something, anything, to wake them up. The air conditioning hummed louder than the crowd. In the ring, a champion stood holding a microphone, reciting lines that felt rehearsed a week ago in a boardroom. It was safe. It was controlled. It was exactly what the company wanted. A perfectly managed product with zero risk. But the thing about total control is that it makes the chaos, when it finally arrives, feel catastrophic. It started with a flicker, not a planned lighting cue, but a genuine disturbance. The massive LED screens wrapping the arena stuttered for a fraction of a second. The audio feed gave a sharp, high-pitched whine that made people cover their ears. Then silence. Absolute, heavy silence. The champion in the ring lowered the microphone, looking confused, glancing toward the production area for a cue that never came. The lights didn't just dim, they died. The arena plunged into a darkness so thick you couldn't see the person next to you. For 10 seconds, there was nothing. No music, no pyro. Just the sound of 20,000 people shifting nervously in the dark. This wasn't a commercial break. This felt like a mistake, technical failure, or perhaps something much worse. Stickman silhouettes in the crowd began to stand up, their white outlines trembling slightly against the black background. The atmosphere shifted from boredom to a primal, instinctive anxiety. They weren't waiting for a show anymore. They were waiting to see what had gone wrong. And then the sound hit. It wasn't music. It was a distorted, industrial screech that sounded like metal tearing apart, followed by a slow, rhythmic bass drum that mimicked a heartbeat. Thump, thump. The stage didn't explode with colorful fireworks. Instead, a wall of thick gray fog began to roll out from the entrance tunnel, spilling over the ramp like water. It was slow, deliberate, and suffocating. Security ran to the barricades. Fans jumped to their feet. Commentators stood up from their chairs because when she appeared inside that explosion of fog and flame, nobody could believe it. Her return wasn't exciting. It was chaos. She's BACK in WWE looked terrified. She walked out of the smoke, not with the strut of a superstar, but with the march of a soldier entering occupied territory. She wore no merchandise. There were no logos on her gear, no bright colors to sell toys. She was dressed entirely in black, her hood up, her face obscured by shadow. She didn't pose for the cameras. She didn't wave to the fans. She just walked. The camera operators seemed hesitant to film her, zooming out as if they were waiting for instructions to cut the feed. The referee in the ring actually stepped back, pressing himself against the turnbuckles. This wasn't a surprise entrant in a match. This looked like an invasion. She climbed the steel steps. She didn't look at the crowd. She looked directly at the hard camera, her eyes visible through the shadow of her hood, cold, detached, and dangerous. The sign held by a fan in the front row dropped to the floor. The champion in the ring dropped the title belt. The illusion of the show had shattered. Character was gone. The woman who had been exiled was standing in the center of the empire that tried to erase her. The commentary team is usually the anchor of the show. They are the voice of the company. It's trained to sell every moment as the greatest thing ever. But in this moment, their training failed them. If you listen to the raw audio feed from that night, you don't hear hype. You'll hear confusion. You'll hear the lead announcer, a man with 30 years of experience, stammering. He didn't have a catchphrase ready, because this wasn't on his run sheet. He simply whispered, "Is that ... Can't be." The color commentator, usually loud and obnoxious, was dead silent. The silence spoke louder than any scream could. It told the audience at home that the script had been thrown out the window. They were watching a car crash in slow motion. The headsets were likely filled with screaming producers shouting conflicting instructions. Cut to commercial. No, keep rolling. Get security out there. In the arena, the sound was unique. It wasn't the high-pitched cheer of happiness. It was a low, guttural roar of disbelief. It was the sound of 20,000 people gasping at once, followed by a noise that sounded like fear mixed with awe. Men and women held their hands over their mouths. Some were actually crying not tears of joy, but the overwhelming emotional release of seeing a ghost. They had been told she would never step foot in this ring again. They had been told bridges were burned, Lawsuits were filed, and names were banned. Seeing her standing there felt illegal. It felt like we were all accomplices to a crime just by watching it happen. The air in the stadium felt heavy, charged with a static electricity that made the hair on your arms stand up. It was a collective realization that history was being rewritten in real time. While the arena was locked in a trance, the world outside was burning down. Within 30 seconds of her face appearing on screen, the internet didn't just react, it broke. Social media platforms lagged under the sheer volume of posts. The trending topics worldwide were instantly monopolized by her name. But it wasn't just wrestling fans tweeting, it was news outlets. It was casual viewers who hadn't watched the product in 10 years, texting their friends, "Turn on the TV, now." The sheer speed of the information spread was terrifying. Grainy screenshots of her walking through the fog were being shared like classified documents. Speculation ran wild. Was this a work? Was it a shoot? Did she actually just buy a ticket and jump the rail? The blurring of reality is what draws people in, and in this moment, the line between fiction and reality was completely erased. You saw videos uploaded from phones in the crowd showing security guards looking at each other, shrugging, unsure if they should tackle her or let her pass. That hesitation went viral. It proved that nobody knew. The chaotic energy transferred through the screens of millions of phones. People paused their dinners, pulled over their cars, and woke up their spouses. The fear of missing out gripped the entire fan base. It was a masterclass in organic viral marketing, born not from a boardroom strategy, but from the raw, unpredictable nature of human emotion. The company had spent millions trying to create moments, but this moment cost them nothing but their comfort. It was a reminder that in a world of curated content, nothing beats the visceral shock of the unexpected. The digital world was on fire, and she was holding the match. To understand the true weight of this return, you have to look away from the ring and visualize the gorilla position, the nerve center just behind the entrance curtain. Usually this area is a place of organized chaos, but on this night, it was a scene of absolute panic. Imagine the executives, men in expensive suits who control billion-dollar stocks. When her music hit, their faces went pale. This wasn't just a wrestler returning. This was a liability. There were legal agreements in place. There were sponsors to consider. There were networks that demanded a family-friendly rating. She represented none of that. She represented rebellion. Reports from backstage later leaked that the lead producer threw his headset onto the desk, shattering it. Writers were frantically flipping through their scripts, realizing that weeks of planning had just been rendered useless. The main event? Forget it. The championship storyline? Irrelevant. The entire ecosystem of the show had to pivot instantly. You could imagine the shouting matches over the headsets. "Cut her mic," one executive screams. "No, let her speak. The ratings are spiking," yells another. It was a war between control and commerce. They were terrified of what she might say, but they were addicted to the attention she was bringing. The panic wasn't just about the disruption of the show, it was about the loss of authority. For the first time in years, the inmates were running the asylum. The wrestlers in the back crowded around the monitors, ignoring their cues, watching like fans. They knew that the hierarchy of the locker room had just shifted. The queen had returned, and the kings were scrambling to hold on to their crowns. The fear in the back was palpable, a cold sweat running down the spine of the corporate machine. Inside the ring, the atmosphere was even more volatile. The security team at ringside is trained to tackle fans who jump the barricade. But what do you do when the intruder is a legend? What do you do when the intruder is the one person the crowd wants to see more than anyone else? You could see the hesitation in the body language of the security personnel. They took half steps forward, hands hovering near their belts, looking back at the production area for a signal. A thumbs down meant tackle. A thumbs up meant stand down. But no signal came. The paralysis of command trickled down to the ground floor. She stood in the center of the ring, surrounded by this ring of indecision. She looked at the security guards, not with aggression, but with pity. She knew they couldn't touch her. If they laid a hand on her, the crowd would riot. Literally riot. She had weaponized the audience's love as a force field. The champion, still in the ring, looked small. The belt over their shoulder, usually a symbol of ultimate power, now looked like a toy prop. The champion looked at the security, pleading with their eyes for someone to restore order. But order had left the building. Security team eventually lowered their hands and backed away, fading into the shadows. They realized what the audience already knew. This was her ring now. The physical barrier of security had dissolved, leaving only the psychological barrier between the past and the present. The panic had subsided into a tense standoff, a high-stakes poker game where she held all the cards, and the house was terrified she was about to flip the table. Why was there so much fear? To understand the panic, you have to understand the departure. She didn't leave with a retirement speech and a bouquet of flowers. She didn't get a Hall of Fame induction, left in flames. Years ago, she was the one who spoke the uncomfortable truths. She called out the politics, the glass ceilings, and the favoritism. She was the voice of the voiceless before it was a marketing slogan, and for that, she was punished. Her storylines were buried. Her microphone was cut. Eventually, she was erased from the video packages, her name scrubbed from the website as if she never existed. It was a Soviet-style purging of history. The company thought that if they ignored her long enough, the fans would forget. They thought they could replace her with newer, shinier, more obedient versions. But they underestimated the emotional memory of the audience. The silence didn't make people forget. It made them mythologize her. She became a martyr for the sport. Every time the show was boring, every time a storyline didn't make sense, the fans whispered her name. She became the symbol of what could be. Her return wasn't just a wrestler coming back to work. It was a ghost haunting the people who buried her. It was a reminder of every mistake the company had made. Her presence in the ring dug up old graves. It forced the commentary team, the management, and the fans to confront the ugly reality of how it ended. The scar tissue was ripped open. The panic backstage wasn't just about the script, it was the fear of karma. They knew they had wronged her, and now the bill had come due. During her years away, she didn't just sit at home. She built a life. She found success in other worlds, proving she didn't need the machine to survive. She wrote books, she acted, she healed her body, she found peace. And that is what made her return so terrifying. A wrestler who needs the job is easy to control. You can threaten to fire them. You can threaten their pay. But a wrestler who has nothing to lose, that is a dangerous variable. She didn't come back for the money. She didn't come back for the fame. She had plenty of both. This meant her motivation was something purer and darker. The look in her eyes as she stood in that ring wasn't the look of an employee seeking approval. It was the look of someone on a mission. She had left as a victim, but she returned as a conqueror. The narrative had shifted from "does she have what it takes" to "what is she going to do to us?" The audience sensed this autonomy. It respected that she walked away on her own terms and came back on her own terms. It gave her an aura of invincibility. She wasn't playing a character written by a team of 30-year-old writers. She was presenting her authentic self. The vulnerability of her exile, the injuries, the depression, the struggle to find identity outside the ring had hardened her into diamond. The company realized they weren't dealing with the same person they fired. They were dealing with the evolved version, one who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to burn the kingdom down to get the respect she was owed. Finally, the moment came. The music stopped. The crowd noise settled into a buzzing hum. She lifted the microphone. The hand that held it was steady. No shaking. The camera zoomed in tight on her face, catching every micro-expression. The makeup was minimal, the scars of the business visible. She didn't start with a catchphrase. She didn't scream. Spoke in a low conversational tone that forced everyone in the arena to lean forward. "Did you miss me?" The reaction was seismic, but she cut through it. She began to speak not about championships, but about time. She spoke about the time stolen from her. She spoke about the fans who kept her name alive when the machine tried to kill it. She looked up at the luxury box where the owner sat, hidden behind tinted glass. She pointed a single finger at them. "I didn't come back to save this company," she said, her voice echoing off the rafters. "I came back to remind you who owns it. It's not the people in the suits, it's the people in the seats." It was a populist manifesto delivered in the center of a corporate empire. Every word felt like a dagger. The commentary team stayed silent, knowing they couldn't spin this. This was raw, unfiltered truth. She wasn't following a script. She was channeling the collective frustration of every fan who felt ignored. The emotional weight was crushing. You could see fathers holding their daughters, pointing at the ring, saying, "Watch this. It's important." It transcended wrestling. It was about resilience. It was about standing up to a giant and not blinking. The promo ended not with a threat of violence, but with a promise of change. As the show went off the air, the logo flashed in the corner of the screen. The copyright notice appeared. But the cameras didn't cut. They lingered. Usually, a return ends with a fight. A finisher, a brawl to send the crowd home happy. But this story had a different ending. The champion, who had been standing in the corner the whole time, finally stepped forward. The crowd braced for a fight, expected the champion to attack the returnee. Instead, the champion looked at the belt in their hands. They looked at the corporate executives in the front row, frantically waving for them to attack. Then they looked at the woman in black. In a moment that made the entire stadium gasp, the champion didn't throw a punch. They dropped the belt. Not in surrender, but in solidarity. They stepped over the title, walking to the center of the ring, and extended a hand. The broadcast faded to black, not on a violent collision, but on a handshake. The panic in the back wasn't because of a fight. It was because of the peace. The panic that the title of this video promised wasn't about physical danger. It was about the loss of control. The two biggest stars had just formed an alliance against the management. The return hadn't just disrupted the show. It had started a revolution. The twist was that she didn't come back to win the game. She came back to change the rules. And as the screen went black, the only thing WWE management could do was watch, terrified, as their carefully constructed universe crumbled under the weight of a single, unscripted handshake.